Okay, hello friends. I should have filmed yesterday's session because I hate it when my YouTube training logs turn into nothing but pressing sessions because I work quite hard on the other lifts. And yesterday I had a pretty good session, but I was focused on actually successfully completing aforementioned decent session. The main work yesterday, I did some calves, did some mobility. I hit 3 sets of 8 at 375 on front squats, which for me is some pretty good volume. Hopefully that will be sufficient foundation to move forward and beat my all-time best front squat, which is only 530 right now. So I think there's lots of easy gains to be made as I stop having issues with passing out with high percentages, which has been getting better. I then moved on to supersetting GHD sit-ups and deadlifts. And on the deadlifts, I worked up to 600 pounds for a set of 4, and then a set of 6. I'm pretty weak for straight sets. So that was pretty good volume to end this base phase. So honestly, very high note to end the phase on both the front squat and the deadlift. I've kind of laid down the kind of foundation I was looking for on just about everything. Today is the last day of aforementioned base phase. Pretty boring, just doing some Larson pressing. I might go for like a 500-pound Larson press this block. I think I've been good for that for a while, but I've never actually tried anything close to it because generally speaking, when the weights start to get heavy at the end of a training cycle, I switch my secondary bench day over to more comp benching so I can get more practice in the higher percentage ranges with the technique that I'm going to be using. So I've never really pushed past 455 on Larson's. So I might be looking to do that this block. We'll see. Kind of depends on what my bench needs. But it'd be awesome to kind of check off that box because fucking Freaky D has done it a billion times now. I would like to at least say I've done it once. So that's something we want to get done. I'm supersetting my Larson's today with, I've kind of been bouncing back and forth between pull downs and pull ups. Kind of undecided. I've got to up my intensity on my pulling motions. I think that upper body pulling strength is a little bit of a hole in my strongman game, or I guess it's not a hole in my strongman game. It's a hole in my physical development that holds back some of my strongman events. So just pushing for some rep PRs is something I got to do there. I'm looking to save up and buy a chest supported T-bar row. That way I can get in a lot of horizontal pulling volume, even though my lower back is always smoked. So that'll be something that should help me really up that pulling strength in the upper body. Been doing some neutral grip Chit-Ups for the first time in a while. Those have been fun. Probably just gonna stick to pull downs today. We'll see. Then I have incline bench, rear delt flies, and then some arm work. So nothing super exciting today, but we're putting in the work to finish this this base phase strong because this is where the PRs are built, not necessarily in the heavier stuff. Okay, so just did my set of pull downs there, and we loaded up the working weight for the day on the Larson press, which is 365. So I will give you guys what the plan is, and that kind of ties into some questions I got on my my last bench pressing video. A couple people asked me some questions about how I program, because it seems very, let me slide this down, very heavily auto-regulated. Kind of seems like I'm doing whatever I feel. I promise there is a system there. So the first one was the guy asked, oh, your training looks really simple. Has it always been that way? And it certainly has not. When I was younger, average upper body session would be somewhere between 7 and 10 exercises, doing a solid bit of work on each exercise. And I think that as long as I went home and ate accordingly, I benefited a lot from that. And I had a lot of complex rationales for what accessories I was doing and how I was loading them. And I think that did me a lot of favors. But as I've gotten stronger, the number of exercises in a session that I can do a really good job on has gone down, right? Just that there's more warm-up sets for each exercise. Each exercise is more taxing than it used to be. So I've had to kind of take like a fine-tooth comb to some of my training and say, okay, well, what are the essentials? And especially that main bench press day that I posted the other day is extremely distilled down just because of the amount of fatigue I'm carrying at that point in the week. So I don't think necessarily that like these like kind of cool minimalisty training sessions are going to be best for everyone. For me, it's more of a fatigue management tool right now. So just kind of getting that out of the way. No, it hasn't always been that way. In some phases of my program where I'm doing a little bit less work on the main lifts and I'm doing more accessories, I think the complexity will rise a good bit. And then the other thing that I was asked was, it seems like you're kind of picking reps arbitrarily. And especially on the bench press, yeah, to some degree I am. I feel pretty comfortable calling myself an advanced bench presser at this point. It's the one lift where a ton of auto-regulation does me well because I have developed a very good intuitive sense for what weights I need to be touching by a certain point in the training cycle, how much work needs to be done at any given weight to get better for the next week, and then also a good feel for like, okay, well, when am I doing more harm than good doing more, or when have I just not done enough and I would just benefit from doing more? I feel on the bench press in particular, and to a lesser degree the overhead press, I have developed a pretty good feel for these things, and so I build that into my training approach, right? So today we have 365 on the bar, and for a session like this, I usually would give myself one of three options that I kind of make the call based on my intuition. So option one is I would have a number of sets, right? Depending on who I coach, that number of sets might vary. For lots of people in a base phase, we'd be looking at like 4 to 5 working sets on their main bench press variation. Sometimes as many as 6 to 8, depending on the lifter. But lots of the time we'd be looking at 4 to 5. I do 3. Part of that is because I'm stronger than most people, so each one set is more taxing, and that certainly matters. But part of that is also because I'm also juggling the training demands of trying to be a good overhead athlete for strongman. So it's not as though bench pressing is my only goal, whereas I probably would be sneaking in 4 working sets. So I'm like, okay, well, I've got 3 working sets. Based on some percentages, the rough working weight for the day is 365 pounds. I either take 3 straight sets, aiming for an RPE 7 or so, maybe overshooting the last one just for some fun, with the goal of accumulating as many working reps as possible at this weight. So for example, I might go for like 3 sets of 8. If that was the case, 24 total working reps at this weight would be pretty solid. Option 2 is to hit 2 sets at like RPE 6 and then AMRAP the last set. That's just kind of if there's a set I have in mind for that final set. I'm still accumulating a good bit of volume, but if I'm like, oh, well, I want to get 10 reps at 365, that's just kind of something that got me fired up for this training session, was the premise of doing that. I might, instead of taking straight 7s, I might dial back the first 2, rep out the final one, usually to an RPE 9. I generally stay away from ever hitting a true 10 in like one of these base phases. And then option 3, which I don't really ever do during my base phases because I just don't think it's a good use of time with lighter percentages such as this, would be to take a top AMRAP with no sets beforehand, back the weight off for about 10 to 15%, and then hit those 2 extra sets. So again, we're hitting 3 working sets. We're actually dropping back the weight to then get in the volume. Today, the wise call would be just hitting like 3 straight sets, accumulating some volume and moving on. I would like to go for 10 here. I don't know if that's going to be there. I'm quite tired from my main bench day. So I wouldn't be surprised if I can't do it. But that being said, I think there's a good chance if I get my adrenaline up, that could happen. So I'm thinking of going like 6, 6, 10 22 working reps is still very much in range. Again, probably the move here is the straight sets, but I have a good feel for knowing that, okay, these two things are gonna be roughly equivalent in terms of what they're gonna provide me in terms of training stimulus. I'm gonna opt for the more fun one today. There's a time and a place. Lots of my bench pressing this training cycle, you're gonna notice, is gonna be taking that more straight set total volume based approach, just because I've deemed that to be what needs to be done right now. Yeah, that's kind of where we're at. We're gonna get after it. Who knows, I might bail on this real quick and be like, okay, we're hitting straight sixes if I am very tired, or maybe we're gonna go for the 10 at the end. But that's kind of roughly the system I'm working under, is base phase. For me goes 63, 67, 71, 75%, just fixed weights. And then the approach I take kind of depends on what I feel would be beneficial. It's not to say this is what everybody should do, because I think a lot of people would just take that as an excuse, and some people would kind of have a cognitive bias towards always taking the top set and then the back offs and drilling poor technique, which if you want to always take the AMRAP, you should probably be taking more straight sets. Or some people would just take that as an excuse to never do a particularly hard set and always do extremely submaximal sets. And if that's your inclination, is you probably should be doing the top set to expose yourself to some higher intensity work. But yeah, I'm sorry for the rambling. I'm very, very tired. This is the final day of my base phase, so brain's pretty zapped. Okay, I forgot to put down my camera for the pull down again. I promise I'm doing sets of 8 to 12 on the straight bar lat pull downs between these sets here. I'm not just lying. Just keep forgetting to put down the camera. First set of 6 felt fine. Not great, not bad. Right pec felt a little twingy. Definitely not worried about it. Not much to it. Probably gonna hit another 6. Get fired up. I'm not sure 10's gonna be there, but regardless of what I get, it'll be solid volume to end off this base phase. I definitely realized pretty quickly through this base phase that if my main goal was benching, I definitely would be doing 4 to 5 working sets on the flat pressing, and then I would also be doing a little bit more supplemental pec volume. But because my focus is being split between being a good bench presser for fun and being a good overhead presser because that's what I compete in, we kind of got to find more of that minimum effective volume rather than looking for that maximum recoverable volume. That being said, it has been a phenomenal base phase. I've probably laid down the biggest base I ever have on the deadlift. This is only my second or third training cycle back to front squatting, but so far so good. Seems to be as wide of a base as I've ever had, so that's nice. A lot of the front squat isn't necessarily down to strength, it's about not passing out, but I think that just spending a lot of time under tension in that front rack position by doing my volume will aid me in that, and if not, I'll make my adjustments for next training cycle to include some heavy holds during the base phase to make sure we're still working on that. Would be a lesson learned, but I'm hopeful that I've set myself up for success there. Bench press has gone pretty well. You guys saw my last base phase benching session, pretty decent. This has gone pretty decent, nothing to complain about, nothing to write home about, but nothing to complain about. What else is there? Oh, someone commented they haven't seen much back squatting. I have been SSB back squatting every week. I haven't done anything cool yet, which is why I have not filmed. Still just kind of relearning the motor pattern. Earlier this week, I think I hit 500 pounds for a set of 6, and then a set of 8. So not like all-time best type stuff quite yet, but slowly getting there. I'll probably start filming that for you guys pretty soon. I would like to be back repping in the 600s before I post it too much, but it is what it is. And then the push press has gone quite well. Spamming a bunch of TKEs has helped keep my patellar tendons healthy, which has been historical issues I've had with push press. The only thing is getting over this wrist pain I have working on getting my front rack back. Other than that, those went well too, so not much I could complain about. All right, second set of 6 in the books. The strength feels good, but my ability to keep the bar path really locked in feels less good. So while they look and feel relatively easy, I have a hunch I'm gonna hit a wall. Again, we're gonna see how much getting fired up, how much really trying to maximize my cues and keeping that bar path consistent can do for me. We're gonna see. I'm gonna bring some intensity. Mr. Joffrey commented on my last video, which I'm flattered that he bothers to watch my shit. He seems like a pretty smart guy, got a pretty popular channel. I like most of his takes. But he commented that he appreciated that I left in the 30 seconds or the minute before my hardest working set on my benches last week, just to kind of see what that preparation looks like. And that's something I've always been kind of hesitant to do or embarrassed to do. Because I've always thought it was goofy. Like guys, every single clip they post on Instagram, it seems like more of their video is their like hype up routine that they seem really proud of more than it is the lift itself. I would rather see a lift, right? So part of that's just my own observations of people I follow. And then part of that is, for those not familiar, there's this thing called the arousal curve. I'll try to make this quick for everybody who knows what it is, but the arousal curve is just this idea of different people fall at different points on this curve. It's like a graph of performance on one axis and like how hyped up, how much adrenaline you have on the other, right? And some people, they get more and more hyped up, they perform better and better and better until they hit a certain point where they're so hyped up that all their cues go out the window and then they perform badly, right? So some people actually get their optimal performance at a very low state of arousal. I'm sure you can think of a lot of lifters you follow who just look like they're at a funeral before they attempt a PR, because that's how they perform best. Whereas I have identified myself through my training history to always be kind of more on that high arousal end of the arousal curve, right? The more fired up I get, the stronger I get, right? So lifting while fired up is something that is a pivotal part of any period of my training where I've gotten really good gains. And that's not necessarily the case for everyone, but it is for me. It's part of the reason I like a home gym setting is because I'm embarrassed about having to get fired up when other people aren't there with the same goals. You know, it's just a little awkward. So I was glad that at least somebody liked to see it. I might include it more. If it gets obnoxious, just let me know, I'll remove it. If you guys want to see it, I can leave it in. Just try not to bully me too much, but it's always been a big part of my lifting. That's always been a little bit of a pain, right? It's like at the YMCA, you don't want to get fired up, right? So like I have to really try to do it internally, which I'm not the best at. So I've always been like a little embarrassed to post it. I think it's a little cringy, but it's part of my process for getting stronger, certainly, and mastering the skill of spiking my adrenaline on demand. So we'll include that again. Try not to laugh at me too much. Great success. Okie dokie, warming up on the incline now. As a coach, I really like incline. I've had a lot of guys, especially guys with bigger arches in their bench press, using an incline as a means of arch reduction. Seems to have yielded a lot of my guys' success, and even those without big arches, as a lift to extend the range of motion, maybe bias it towards the shoulders a little bit more. All around, big fan of the incline. I, as an athlete, not a huge fan. I've never been a really big incline presser. Way back in the day, I was really strong at bench press and I was really strong at dips. I think at this point in time, I probably benched about 440 pounds, something in that ballpark. And then I had also done a set of 4 with body weight plus 5 plates on dips. So body weight plus 225. Now that dips have become popular again, I know guys are crushing that number. So I've considered like getting back into dips now that I'm stronger and throwing my hat back in the ring. But I was quite strong at a downward press and a horizontal press. But I was not very strong in the overhead plane just because I hadn't prioritized it much. And I was not very strong in the incline plane. This made sense. I started incorporating more overhead work into my program, got stronger on overhead press, got to an acceptable, a strong level of strength in the vertical plane. And I had assumed, okay, well, if I'm strong at flat bench and I'm strong overhead, I'll be strong in between, right? Absolutely wrong. Even though I do my overhead presses with a bit of layback too, so it's not even like a pure vertical press, not super strong in the incline. Just goes to show you get good at what you practice. And the times that I have worked on my incline, I didn't feel like it was a good development tool for my chest. And I don't know, it had stressed out my shoulder a few times. Just me personally, like I said, as a coach, I love the motion. I don't want to skew anyone away from them. Just within my own trial and error, it didn't seem to yield good enough returns to justify doing it. Historically, that exercise would be better used doing something else. But that being said, ever since I've pivoted the use of incline bench in my program to be an overhead assistance exercise rather than a bench assistance exercise, I've gotten much better results from them. So to do it, if you watch, right, you're like, oh no shit, Sam, you didn't get good chest work out of the incline because you're not doing them in a good way to bias towards the chest. Yes, I know, that's deliberate. I'm tucking the elbows a little bit more, taking a little bit narrower grip, loading it into the front delts a little bit more because it's meant to be a developmental tool for my overhead press. And I can do a little bit less weight this way for sure. I think if I flared my elbows out a little bit more, took a slightly wider grip and did a little bit more chest dominant incline press, I would certainly be inclining quite a bit more. But I don't think it would have this nice carryover to my overhead pressing that it does with the more tucked elbow position. So been easing back into these. I'm not doing anything cool yet because I'm trying to learn from my mistakes and not tweak my shoulder this time. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at on these, is still kind of in an introductory period. The hope is by the end of this training cycle, I'll be comfortable pushing these really hard and heavy. And then once I'm comfortable with that, I'll be able to run through all of next training cycle, pushing these pretty hard and kind of reaping the front delt gains that could be gained. I do them protracted more at the top, retracting as I come down, protract as I come up. Like I talked about in the bench press, I cue more of a down and back with my scaps the whole time. But because we're training for an overhead press, and in a good overhead press, you're not keeping your scaps down and back. You're allowing them to elevate so you can get to a good, you're allowing them to upper rotate, so you can reach a good overhead position. We are also training the incline bench with more freedom of scapular movement because the lift that it's an accessory for has a high freedom of scapular movement. So it's kind of my rationale, nothing magical to it. Okay, we're at 3 plates now. I forgot to film 275. I promise I didn't just jump straight to 3 plates. Every new motor pattern requires at least a couple warm-ups. Better safe than sorry, as long as you're not pressed for time. Just because your pressing muscles are warm doesn't mean you're necessarily ready to jump straight into a different pattern. But regardless, like what I was talking about in the past, I've used incline. I've probably pushed it too quickly because I have good overhead strength and I've got good bench pressing strength. I have the ability to incline press more than what I should, like more than what I've prepared for. And I think that's part of the reason I've tweaked my shoulder a couple of times. Hopefully Kirsten doesn't get mad. I'm gonna call her back right after this. Let's see. I've tweaked it a couple times. That's not that the motion is inherently a problem for me necessarily. It's more probably that I rushed in and tried to do cool weights too quickly. But I also find that even with some good preparation, it's been kind of a hit or miss exercise for me. Transitioning, using it from a chest development tool to a front delt development tool, though, has been quite helpful. Like pressing through at the top and doing it, not necessarily the most efficient way to incline as much as possible, but treating it as an overhead development tool has made it a little bit more friendly on my shoulders. So that's been awesome. And I think the plan is to get reasonably strong. This is about a 45-degree incline. Get reasonably strong at this angle with the protraction. I don't know, maybe like 405 for 3-ish, which still isn't good compared to my flat bench, but that would actually be the most I've ever inclined because I've always tweaked my shoulder before pushing it very hard. Do that with like the more protraction focused press, and then potentially move it up one more, maybe not a true high incline, but a little bit higher to again further bias it towards the shoulders and really hammer home. The point of this exercise is a front delt development tool, not necessarily a chest development tool. So that's kind of my plan, to condition my shoulder to this angle. Once I'm good to go there, drop the weight back, move it up one more, and hopefully that will allow me to avoid the pitfalls I've run into on this exercise in the past. I forgot to film the rope press downs, but now here are the rope press ups.